Isn't that your seat?
Heidi's on her way?
Yes, she is.
Erica, I see.
How'd it go with the nurses?
How you doing?
It just goes around and around in circles with them. They're the most difficult, actually. I mean, just because nothing gets done and they're so nice, you don't want to be like,
Be right hello. Look at you. Very cute. You can maybe get a pizza. Okay, if we're all here, are we all here? No, Erica's not.
Erica's coming in a minute.
She's here.
Yeah, she's here.
She'll be here in a minute. Do I have an extra? Julie Corbett, my sister, bring extra pens for me.
Volunteering is that person.
She was the pen person I joined. And Steve has a pen.
No
Looks like
worries.
Steve might have an extra.
What's that?
An extra pen for God.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Bam. That's with mine. Okey doke. Is this on? Yes, it is. Okay. So, 7:06, and we can call the meeting to order because we're all here, yeah? And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then we will move right into our work session. So take it away, Dr. A.
Thank you. So, scheduled for, on your workshop schedule for a report on the completion of the CREC audit, the special ed goals. Those of you who are at the retreat this summer recall that, we had made a determination that, on my recommendation, that we would repeat this process in an effort to verify that these goals, objectively verify by a third party that these goals had been met, and secondarily, get some information that would form the basis for setting further goals. What's the next level? What are the next step, and so on. Now, as you know, we've had several chairs. We've had new board members. Our committees have only been recently organized. I made a promise to Mrs. Lemieux at the time that we would have the ad hoc committee, assuming it was reauthorized, be able to choose between the two groups who we thought might be interested in performing this. That committee was only recently reorganized and had a chance to meet. We have a new chair who has some other ideas that may enhance this further, and so we're not doing that tonight. And so instead, we're going to use this opportunity to do what we used to do and missed last year because of the press of business, which is to have a mid-year report on the status of your priority implementation steps and outcomes. I'm going to do that fairly briefly by going through them and giving you some information. There are two aspects of this that involve identifiable personnel and officers, and I will need to do that in executive session, so we're anticipating a brief executive session following this. So for the benefit of our new board members, I just wanted to explain the relationship between our strategic operating plan and the goals I'm going to be reporting on tonight. So when our plan was developed in 2016, it was actually developed at the end of the 2015-16 school year, or approved then. It was developed during the course of that year. we gathered all the data we could regarding student performance and the state of the district and the condition of the buildings and all of that. And so the what that you see here, when they say what, what to do, the 5 goals, those were based on data. Those did not fall out of the sky. The strategies were informed by some 32 stakeholder group meetings we held that year. And that included 5 fairly well-attended public forums, okay? So that kind of informed the strategies, which was the how of the plan. So, when people look at this plan, it's not what the superintendent wants to do. It's not what any particular board member who has a particular issue wants to do. This is based upon data. It's based upon how we bring our students from where they were to a better place and a better school system. The thought at the time of inception was, and by the way, the board voted a year ago to extend this a year. This was actually up a year from then, but we were behind on some of these implementation steps. Some of it due to budget constraints, others just due to what our capacity is for change at any given time. So the thought was that if you did a quarter of this each year, at the end of 4 years, now approaching 5 years, you would in fact complete the entire plan. And that was the genesis of the priority implementation steps, which you see in the very back of the plan, and the priority outcomes. The thought was that if you could achieve a quarter of the outcomes or go 25% of the way in terms of student achievement each year, at the end of the plan, at the end of several years, you would attain the entire thing. And then, if you could, in terms of implementation of the strategies, if you did about a quarter of that each year, then you would do it all. Now, one of the priority implementation steps for this year is this capacity and coherence review. And you'll see it's number 1 on the list that I'm going to review with you now. That is by the Connecticut Center for School Change. That was intended to assess the status of the strategic operating plan. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about 95% of it has been completed. But we need someone to independently verify that. But more importantly, we need to identify for the new superintendent opportunities for further growth. And the board, when they looked at this during the summer at the retreat, also added the assessment of capacity because there was some discussion around our central office being too small to have the capacity. We pride ourselves on the fact that we spend less per student on the central office than Stamford or virtually any other district in Fairfield County. However, there was a concern that the board expressed as to whether or not the capacity was sufficient. And, maybe this involves a different way of organizing people in positions, right? This form of organization came about it was done by my predecessor, Manny Rivera, came about at the end of the 14-15 school year. And it was in reaction to a situation that was viewed to be fairly dysfunctional at the time. Now, but again, 5 years later, there may be necessary to make further adjustments. Other ways of looking at things may be necessary. So, in terms of this goal, made all the arrangements with the Center for School Change. I've had several meetings with them during the fall, and we have one coming up, the final one coming up next week, and then they're going to start their work at the beginning of March. So they will be on site here in the district March and April. You have moved your annual meeting with the SGC co-chairs to May. That was one of the things you did at the retreat. So that June meeting, they are going to give their report. And hopefully you'll have a candidate by then who you can invite to that meeting, and this should be a very interesting presentation, based upon where we are now, re-benchmarking, and what are recommendations for the future. So anyway, that's right on track and on schedule. As I go through these, if you have a question, would you please ask it as we go along, as opposed to waiting. Implementation of phase 1 of the customer service plan. You remember you had a workshop session on that. We also had a session at the retreat on this. That is on track for completion. Phase 1 involves a good deal of professional development. Probably 60% of that has been completed at this point. It's the branding. Brenda, anything else that's of significance in phase 1?
Just some of the signage stuff as well. So we are on track in terms of all of the professional development. We've done customized training for the HR department. We will actually be doing the entire food service team on February 13th, working with the talent office and with Chartwells. So we're getting them involved as well. You saw the new signage up here in central office, since that was something that was a key priority on here. And then the redesign of the district website is actively underway as well. So
And that's paid for out of the current year budget? There's no, okay.
Yep. So those are some of the highlights. We have, as Dr. Ray said, we have a lot of the training going on, and most of our front office staff has been trained in both level 1 and level 2 training, how to deal with more challenging situations. So.
Can I ask what's going to be our measurable for that one?
We are actually doing a second round of mystery shopping. So if you recall, we did the mystery shopping last spring, and that gave us kind of the baseline as to what we needed to put together in terms of the training and where our weaknesses are. So we will be doing another round of that so that we can judge how the schools and how central office is doing against that first baseline that we did last year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So number 3 was phase 2 of the gifted and talented implementation. Remember, those recommendations were made 3 years ago following a year-long study and research and best practice and with the assistance of the University of Connecticut. So this involved, this year, this involved moving the school-wide enrichment model to Rowayton, Kendall, and the 4 middle schools. It's the remaining elementary schools, other than Cranberry and Tracy, that are in the next and final phase. So there should be a goal in that area next year. There's also a pilot going on. We're calling it Young Scholars here because that was the best name at the time. It's actually called something else now. But both Kendall and Rowayton are serving first and second graders in the gifted program, and that's very exciting. That's going very, very well. And again, remember, one of the intended outcomes of this, coming off of a program that was not serving a lot of students and had disproportionality in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of the students that it was serving, is to develop giftedness, right? Is to identify the potential for giftedness and to be able to develop it. You saw some data last summer that showed that students who had been in the school-wide enrichment program at Tracy and Cranberry did better and grew for the first time in many years that we've been tracking the progress of gifted students. So we're looking forward to that occurring again, but this is, as we speak, this is in process of implementation. We have started the 2 Montessori primary level classrooms at Brookside School. The 3-year-olds will move up to 4, the 4-year-olds will move up to 5, and we will enroll 16 new 3-year-olds, right? And that will complete the 2 primary classrooms. So a year from now, in other words, not next year, but for the following school year, 21-22, we have to plan on the lower elementary the 2 lower elementary classrooms.
What's our waiting list for the Montessori? 'Cause I know a lot of people are sad that it's only available, for one neighborhood.
So the waiting list is now dissolved. We had a waiting list of about 18 people, I think, when we opened the program. That will occur again for the 3-year-olds. My sense is because it's only the 3-year-olds as opposed to 2 grades, it's going to be much more extensive. We've been giving preference to members of the Brookside school community neighborhood. Obviously, the interest in this goes far beyond that. We have many people interested in many school communities. And, this will be something for you to think about for the future as to whether or not we need another site. Do we need a separate school? How would you accommodate, the parental interest in Montessori?
Are we collecting data for our longitudinal studies or side by side with our other preschool options to show if one or the other is working out better for?
So, we'll have that opportunity when students start moving to the lower elementary class where they will encounter some of our assessments, at least initially with the DIBELS, and then ultimately, with our state testing. Right now in kindergarten, we have very little other than, the teachers indicating how well the students are doing. And, you go into those classrooms, it's delightful. And this is a focus. Montessori was designed by Maria Montessori to promote independent learning skills and to provide students with a sense of security as a result of being able to learn independently, make choices, and so on. So
it's really SEL at the bottom. Yes.
So this is a great thing, and again, something for you to think about in terms of expansion in the future. Number 5 deals with our desire to examine, this has been mentioned by several board members over the course of the last several years, as to whether or not we could give credit through sports give credit for physical education through sports. I think this issue came up because a number of districts were doing it. Some are still doing it. However, the state standards in physical education changed a couple of years ago. It's now the view of the state that you cannot meet the physical education standards through sports, right? So we have to take this off the list. This is a good mid-year review provides the time to do that. Having said that, there are still a number of districts in the state that are doing this because the state is not enforcing what they are now prescribing, right? So in addition to that, we have found that there are other districts where, with state approval, you can offer sports for credit if they are PE electives. In other words, if they don't involve the 1 credit requirement or the 1 credit health requirement, you can offer a PE elective. And these generally are in areas where they are not CIAC sports. So, for example, you have an elective of archery or fencing, as CGS is going to offer next year, intends to offer next year. Non-CIAC sports, but lifetime sports that are high interest, and you can offer those for credit. And you have to have a certified PE teacher. You have to have 120 hours at least of play and practice time combined. So anyway, my recommendation to you tonight is we just take this off the list. In a few minutes, I'm going to recommend something to take its place that has also occurred. But we are looking at, and we do have underway a study relative to number 6, which is a plan to increase coaching and sponsorship of extracurricular activities by faculty of Norwalk's high schools. The reason for this, there is a body of research primarily developed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on high schools that suggests that the three most important factors in a good high school, in high school reform, are relevance, rigor, and relationship. Those are known as the 3 R's of high school redesign. Of those, relationship is the most important and is most correlated to with persistence to graduation. So, this is student-to-teacher relationship, right? And this is one of the reasons why we try to have smaller schools, right? Where, teachers students are known by their teachers, where they can have a personal relationship with them. But one of the derivatives of this has been the research that links a student having a teacher in class and then out on the field as their coach. You have a much stronger relationship. In other words, that contributes greatly to relationship. Now, this has been a private school model for a number of years. If you get a teaching position in a private school, you're hired to teach a particular subject, but also to coach a particular sport. So, we're not at that place, but we do think that there are a number of things that can be done to increase the coaching and sponsorship by faculty, and this will be a report in an upcoming superintendent's report in the spring. I should also note here that the CIAC has changed its rules concerning magnet schools and small academies. And so let's take CGS. CGS can, students can CGS can offer its own sports, or because CGS is on the campus of Brian McMahon, those students can participate in Brian McMahon sports. Now, the P-TECH will be a similar situation. Going into the future, the Arts Academy, hopefully a similar situation where those schools can offer their own activities and students can also take activities on the campus. For the students that are coming here from other districts, currently the CGS students, but again, if the Norwalk High School plan is realized, it will be students from Stanford, Bridgeport, and some of our surrounding suburbs as well. Those students are limited to taking the sport offered at the school they're attending or their home district. Okay, they cannot participate, as the CGS students have in the past, the suburban students, in the sports offered at Brian McMahon. So that
But a Norwalk student would be able to.
But a Norwalk student would be able to. So that would be the change.
Dr.
Okay.
Kaminsky,
Yeah.
Sorry, just going back to number 5, out of curiosity, you said there are some districts still offering PE credit for sports. Are there any nearby districts that are still doing that, even though the state has changed their rules?
Trying to think. I know Meriden is doing it. I'm not sure there are any in Fairfield County. Joe Manafari has been, in his retirement, has been working with us on this. I think he's identified 3 or 4 in other parts of the state who have.
Thank you.
Yep.
And part of that stems back to what the graduation requirements are for the district. So we have a requirement that matches Connecticut, which is 1 phys ed credit. Many of our districts have 1.5 or 2.
Got it.
So those courses become more of an elective opportunity and not the core.
Thank you.
The fact is, if you're playing a letter sport, it's a huge time commitment, and, you're getting all the discipline and physical needs that you would get from PE. And I know, for my own kid, it was very, very frustrating to have to take PE to fit it into your schedule. But I mean, I guess, I don't know, could you just give us a quick, what the state's logic or why they?
Yes, the logic is that you have to have a certain curriculum in PE in order to meet the state standards in PE, which are not fully addressed by a athletic activity. Okay, the athletic activity is viewed more as the gifted program, right? You take the fittest students or the most adept students in that particular sport, and you're providing them with an opportunity, whereas the PE standards are geared around, all students, and they are more fitness as opposed to sports and agility oriented. This is why one of the measures on the Next Generation Accountability Plan is the President's Physical Fitness Test. So it's all about individual fitness now, as opposed to sports. Okay, so the above the bar redesign of Kendall Elementary School. You will be asked to approve that at your February 18th meeting. This is, as you know, has been an effort on the part of many, many people over the last 2 years to develop this. We are at a point of being able to implement some of the year one activities this year, which were things like the character education program, the
music program, family style dining, the science model.
So these are all the things that were easy to do, that we could do with current resources, and the school is doing them. Had a meeting the other day, Colin, you were there, and you could see evidence of those things. In fact, the students talked about their ruler program and their use of the what is it called, Ralph? The mood meter. Thank you, and so on. So anyway, this will be completed, but again, we are scratching the surface of a school that has such high needs, and scratching the surface of equity in terms of their funding to meet those needs. Number 8 was the later high school start time. As you know, this was approved by the board last year. It will occur as schools open in August. You'll remember there was a recommendation there to benchmark in a number of areas so that we could measure on an ongoing basis the effect on students. That work is underway. It's under Frank Costanzo's guidance, and we will have the evaluation system set up. This also involves, our communications, which is already underway, and the scheduling adjustments that the schools will be making. And as you know, this is budgeted in the budget that you've approved under the transportation changes, which include this as well as the green buses and a couple of other things. In number 9, we had a discussion during the retreat last summer of Cranberry and Nathan Hale middle schools. So many of our schools can be classified as overperforming. In other words, their achievement is far higher than what you would predict given the number of high-need students they are serving. Tracy School is a great example, right? Tracy has about 70% high-need students. It's a Category 1 school, blue ribbon school distinction. But then we have, as we look across our 21 schools, we have 2 schools that over the past several years have been underperforming, and that is Cranberry and Nathan Hale. These schools have the lowest number at elementary and middle respectively of high-need students, and yet they rank in 3rd or 4th place compared to the other elementary schools in reading or math. So we have been partnering with a national group called Mass Insight, who developed this root cause analysis. They have been working with the staff in each school. They've been observing classrooms, doing interviews and so on, and they are moving from that phase to the phase of developing with the staff an improvement plan that everybody owns and everyone can be committed to, that can be implemented beginning in the next school year. This is one of the areas where I need to expand with you on an executive session. given one of the personnel situations in one of these schools. You recall that we have a March break next year in 2021 on the calendar. One of the advantage of this was the trimester system, which already exists at the elementary level and is intended for the middle school level, because it creates the winter break creates the break between the first and second trimesters, and the March break creates a break between the second and third trimester. It also allows us the opportunity around the March break to have parent-teacher conferences. And as you know, or you may not know, we are a district that did not have parent-teacher conferences for grades 6 through 8 in the same way we had it for grades K through 5. So this is an effort, planning this is an effort to really have the same system for parents up to grade 8. This is not, planning for this is not completed, but it would be completed in the spring. The capstone requirement, board members who were here will remember a workshop on this last year that Dr. Myers held, along with the members of the teachers on a committee that worked on this and developed 3 options really for student capstones, and one of them involved a course. But there are different protocols depending upon your needs and how independent the student is. So you'll see this reflected in the high school program of study, which will be approved sometime in March. It'll actually be approved on your March business meeting agenda. And I think some very, very good work has gone into this, and again, along the lines of what was presented last year. Before I get into number 12, I want to call upon Yvette Gorovich to come up and just make a brief announcement.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski. So our school counselors have been very hard at work this year, participating in over 50 hours of professional development to prepare them for the redesign. A small team of us have been invited to present the work at the National School Counseling Conference, which talks about capacity building. But tonight I wanted to alert the board and ask the board's support in recognizing our school counselors during this week, which is National School Counseling Week. And this is from the American Association of School Counseling, the ASCA model that has been our gold standard that we've used in the redesign. And this week, the theme is helping to create better humans through school counseling. And I wanted to publicly commend our school counseling department and our school counselors and ask you to join me in recognizing their very hard work during this year. So thank you.
So we are into, you received this report in October, I think it was. We are into phase 1, which is the most affordable, but although limited phase. We are working on the student success plans. Our administrators in each high school have taken steps following a meeting that Dr. Costanzo and I had with them to reduce the non-counseling paperwork and responsibilities that the counselors had been assigned. Those are being picked up by one of the 5 administrators or 4 assistant principals, 1 for each class, that are in the high schools. And then in addition to that as well, we are looking at the registrar, centralizing the registrar option or registrar role, which involves the analysis of transcripts, having a uniform way of assigning credit and producing transcripts, and that will also lighten some of the clerical load on the counselors. So on that one, the more expensive aspect of the implementation, which is the clinical supervision, that position, there's a position in the budget for that. And the rest of the professional development, we have done a good deal of this year, but much more to go, given the amount of time our counselors had no professional development. That is obviously at play and somewhat at risk in the budget proposal, so whether or not we would be able to proceed with that. But right now, we'll be optimistic and hope to be able to do.
Dr. Adamowski, would you consider some of that professional development a one-time cost?
Yes. Yes, because it's a 3-year plan, so whatever we do each year, we're not going to do it again. We're going to be doing something else, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so this next one, this is the expansion of the required summer reading academy to grade 7. This would complete this, so it was one of the strategic operating plan goals to have summer learning, at least in one subject, at least for a couple of hours a day, reading. During the summer, we began K3, it was K3 when we started, we've added a grade each year. We're now up to 7, which is the rising 8th graders. So this would complete it. Ms. Harris, I think on your last Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, you reviewed the plan for the Summer Academy. That has gone to the board each year for approval. That will be on your October 19th agenda. This goal essentially is complete in terms of the planning. However, we need you to approve this on the 19th. Essentially, this is giving early approval to a budget item, right? So regardless of how the budget goes, we would have to do this. And the reason why we have to have early approval is that at the end of February, parents have to get a notification that their child may be eligible, right? This is based upon the middle of the year testing. And then at the end of year testing, EOY, that would be confirmed or not. But that is too late to just tell the parent, you know, you have to have required summer school if you want to be promoted.
So you said October 19th, but did you mean February 18th?
February 18th, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
great. That's okay. I was kind of catching up.
But I think, like, we all reviewed it, and I think we thought it was great, and I think we're prepared at our next meeting to bring this to the board.
Okay, and then once you do that, we'll be able to notify everyone, including the 7th graders who are eligible or required, those that will be required or invited, and their parents. I mean, we had a little difficulty with people adapting to this initially. Now it's rare that we even get one complaint because parents expect it, and they will make their summer plans accordingly. But they have to know. They have to know at the end of February that there's a good possibility.
Timing wise, we understand the Board of Estimate and Taxation will give us some indication of what they plan to know.
I don't think you'll have,
On the 10th?
I don't think you'll have any idea. You'll just have to either decide you're not going to do this or decide you are going to do it, and it involves early approval, basically, of a budget item.
It's tricky until we know what the cap is to
Yep.
approve it.
No, you will not know that. Every other year, you've done this, and you've just given early approval, and that's one of the things that you just can't cut. Then.
I just had a thought, and this is sort of a brief aside that I'm indulging myself in, and I'm sorry, I don't usually do that. But just because I'm looking at Sherelle, I know that for our summer programming, we have a percentile at which kids are required to go, but it would actually be great if we could boost that, but we can't. Financially, we can't require kids to go who say would be in the 40th percentile, 50th percentile, even though it would be great for them. So I'm just throwing it out into the universe that perhaps we could partner with the library to do some programming that would be voluntary, and then I'm just throwing that idea out, and we can move on. because we're not able to serve as many kids as we would want to anyway.
And Sherelle did have a program. which
Well,
was
we
tier
had,
3.
yeah, we had the tier 3, tier 2, tier 3 intervention program, so, yeah.
So this is, as we look at the big picture of things, and again, in the spirit of, where are we now, where do we need to go in the future? When we began this strategic operating plan, we had no tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, right? So we have tier 2 interventions in place in both reading and math in every school now. This is one of the reasons why our high-need students are doing better than the average student, because we have these interventions. However, in terms of tier 3, this is our only summer school or the summer academy is our only tier 3 intervention. By definition, a tier 3 intervention is specialized and it requires additional time in that area of instruction. Many schools throughout the state, many in Fairfield County, and most of our wealthy neighbors around us will offer tier 3 intervention during the school year. That involves having a reading teacher or a reading consultant in each school who can do that. Westport does that. And so, again, this is another example of, you get what you pay for. These services are expensive, and if you want to offer them, you have to spend at a comparable level. So, I think the future here is to do more in tier 3 than simply to close the achievement gap than simply the summer program. But right now, it's important because it's our only one, and it does prevent a learning loss for at least a good percentage of the students who participate. You're aware that the construction of the lower school is pretty much complete at Ponus. We're grateful for great cooperation from the city staff and our own staff that has brought this about. The middle schoolers are now in that building, and they're having a floor of their building renovated currently, and then they'll go into that floor and then switch floors, and the other floor will be renovated. We anticipate that for the next school year, the Jefferson students will go into the lower school as their swing space so that construction can get underway at Jefferson. We are currently having a hard time fitting all of Jefferson into the lower school. You'll recall that at one point, in fact, at the time that I became superintendent, Jefferson was over 600 students. And we had to freeze enrollment except for the neighborhood. It was a magnet school at the time. At least in name, it was a magnet school. It didn't get any funding. And so as a result of that, Jefferson is down to about 500 students, but the capacity of the lower school is 450. So we're currently looking for a solution for 2 more classrooms. We're also aware that once the lower school is occupied at its capacity of 450, that Ponus will be over capacity by at least 50 students. I mentioned to you in our enrollment report that 3 of our 4 middle schools are over capacity at the current time and projected to continue that way until the school at Ely is built and approximately 200 can be served in the Columbus K-8 school. So under those circumstances, we're going to need more or less a permanent solution on the Ponus campus for at least 2 additional classrooms than what we have now or what was planned at the time that the building was planned. That's an indicator of the growth we are experiencing and have experienced in the last several years.
In the short term, would it be possible, I hate suggesting this because I know how important the space is to these disciplines, but I know that art and music have been done a la carte. Could we then use those 2 special rooms as
That's already the case at, could you come,
But
could you come up, Brenda? Yeah, that we've already done that. We're still 2 classrooms short.
Wow.
And that's with relocating the preschools also.
So the design of the elementary school is basically 3 sections per grade. So that would be 18 classrooms plus classrooms. If we came over, we brought all of Jefferson, we'd have 20 classrooms, which would be 25. So you see how we're trying to fit that in. In the looking at enrollment and making our projection, we're looking for an alternative site for preschool, so the Jefferson preschool would not come at this time. And we would have 2 portable classrooms. We would use classrooms, which take the 2 classrooms you're referencing, and put music on a cart for the 2-year period. So we're still trying to minimize the impact, but that's the current structure.
And if I recall, there was some space at Merrimack. Have we offered people the voluntary opportunity to opt in at Merrimack so that they don't have to be in portables?
Well, you don't have, you can't just put 2 classrooms there. They don't have 2 empty classrooms.
I understand.
You mean like on an
Thinking
individual
thin the herd a
basis.
little bit, yeah. No, can't be done.
I don't think that works there.
Are these classrooms children that are a bubble that will phase out, or is it 2 classrooms worth of students across all 5 years?
Well, what will happen is once Jefferson goes to its school, its enrollment will be lowered to 450, which is the capacity of its new building, by those students who opt for the PONUS K-8 STEM lower school. So in other words, about 200 of those kids of the 450 are going to be Jefferson students. There's a lot of misunderstanding regarding the Jefferson attendance area. Because we don't have a school in South Norwalk, that whole area across from the current Columbus, 295, is bused to Jefferson. Even the King Kennedy complex, which is right across the street from Columbus, is bused, where the students could just walk down the path into their school, is bused to Jefferson. So some of this is going to be addressed by the 200 students in the walk zone who are eligible to walk to the new Chestnut Street School, right? Some of it is going to be addressed by the Jeffersons who have first priority into the K-8 PONUS. The reason why we feel we will need these 2 additional classrooms almost permanently is the fact that the minute Jefferson moves out, PONUS is over-enrolled by 2 classrooms. In other words, as soon as the lower school is filled the way it's supposed to be filled for 450, PONUS is over 2 classrooms. Right now, it's not, because it's using that space plus their space. So, again, this is planning for growth, and there are costs associated with growth.
So to be clear, so part of the planning now is to add 2 more permanent classrooms to the PONUS.
Well, we're working now with Alan Lowe and Jim Giuliano on solutions, but we have exhausted the other options, which have involved renting classroom space in 3 other locations that have been vetted and checked out that don't really work because they need too much work, and you can't get that work done before the students have to use it. So, we've also ruled out moving any of the current portables from Jefferson there because they're in very poor condition. So, we're gonna look towards some semi-permanent situation because our enrollment projections suggest that that's going to be needed in the foreseeable future.
Well, hopefully progress will be made on the Columbus at Ely and the Chestnut Street School, particularly the land piece of it. And if I were a fairy with a magic wand, I would actually make the new Chestnut Street School a K-8 also, right? Like, I know there was a lot of public concern over renovating it as new versus knocking it down, but in either of those circumstances, I feel like you could add more to the existing footprint of the building to maybe make more middle school seats.
So that may be necessary because the Rhoton is also over capacity, and they're taking the South Norwalk students now. And West Rocks is over capacity. And so it may be necessary. I think, at the time, we had this notion of the IB early years, K-5. Again, things change, and you may need to revisit that in terms of grade configuration and program.
For sure. At a neighborhood school would be amazing.
All right, so we're through, we've completed the design phase, or the design phase is being completed on Jefferson currently for its renovation as new. Nice article in the paper about the glass wall gym, which is a striking option, and that will be completed on schedule as anticipated. To social emotional learning, we had the pilot schools of Ponus, Kendall, Fox Run, and Jefferson. All are in the process of pilot implementation. Training of the staff has been trained. Implementation of the mood meters and the other aspects of this, the morning meetings and so on. The whole point of this is to be able to identify your own feelings, to be able to identify the feelings of others, and react appropriately in terms of controlling your own feelings and responding appropriately to the feelings of others. We are having the family-style dining pilots at Kendall, Tracy, and the Montessori classrooms at Brookside. These are all different. The Tracy is a once-a-week event. The Kendall is daily, and the Montessori program is family-style dining in the classroom per the Montessori program design. In the Montessori classrooms, lunch is a big deal. Every student has a job. They have tablecloths, they have china, they have flowers. They clean their own dishes in their dishwasher and silverware and all of that. So that's part of the program. Whereas we're looking at Tracy and Kendall relative to what's the best way of doing this, right? In number 18, we have we're still implementing the second half or year 2 of the Next Generation Science Standards units of instruction. Now, during my report in February, you're going to be receiving from Diane Florado the results of the first assessment of the Next Generation standards, right? And you'll see that our elementary schools are doing fairly well, and that's after not all the units being implemented. All the units will be implemented by the end of this year. The middle schools are doing pretty well. What the assessment points out is that our high schools are not, and all the work that needs to be done around grade 11, which means 9 through 11. And again, we'll have a detailed report on that, but we'll have all the units implemented at the elementary level where we thought the major problem would be by the end of this year in fulfillment of this goal. Now, number 19 is really an enhancement of our K-12 literacy program, around critical reading, writing, and thinking around across all curricular areas. So we just don't treat reading as a subject, as a self-contained subject, but we have reading strategies infused across the curriculum. We'll have Dr. Myers report to you on this later in the year, but a great many teachers are now involved in this. It's been the focus of a good deal of our professional development this year as well. And again, it represents an evolution from depending upon a basal reading program to focusing on the standards in almost everything that you do using a variety of materials and resources. The number 20 is our math curriculum. Now, the reason this is here, some of you are aware, I know the Curriculum Instruction Committee is aware that our math program is going out of print, the Go Math, and it's going to need to be replaced. Now, Go Math, I think, was adopted in 13-14, and so it's lived its useful life. There are many, again, this is a question of looking at the standards and being able to decide what resources and materials are best made available to teachers who can choose what to use to teach a particular standard. And so it may not be that we have another program adopted. It may be that we have several, or it may be that we have, a number of different sets of units and materials that are available to teach certain standards. And again, this represents an evolution, in terms of sophistication from, just program adoption to curriculum implementation. You're going to get in March another high school program of study, further enhanced. This should be an annual situation. It will not be as big as the first one 2 years ago, where we went to 26 credits, but as you know, last year we made enhancements. This year there will be further enhancements in the program of study. The On Track for Graduation for ninth graders is one of the standards in the accountability plan, but we also have to look at this, at the other grades, because we have to have an alignment of courses and teachers teaching courses now for all students to achieve the 26 credits. So we have issues now like science electives. What's the fourth year of science that a student can choose from, right? So there's going to be a realignment here, because there are certain areas that we're going to need less of and certain areas we're going to need more of in order for every student to be able to meet the requirements, the graduation requirements. The American Sign Language, again, is one of the budget goals.
Did we talk about Wolfpack? Did we skip that?
I'm sorry?
What?
Did we skip 21?
21.
Yes, thank you. I skipped 21. Okay, this is the integrated arts design at Wolf Pit School. You had a report on this at your retreat. You gave the green light for it. Staff, under the direction of Jennifer Katona and Jennifer Masson, the principal, have been working very hard on this. I think thus far their work has been highly successful. They're piloting a number of units. They're working on a design that includes an artist in residence. They're doing all kinds of things, and this is integrated arts. In other words, it's integrated with every subject, as opposed to dealing with the arts as separate subjects. They are scheduled to present their recommendations to you in September of next year. So you'll note that we've always had trouble filling the September and October workshop blocks, because there's not enough time to work on the new goals and have something ready. So we've gotten into the cycle the last few years of major things that would be worked on the previous year. So that will be, they have taken on also a partner that is a certifying agency for integrated arts schools, a national organization, similar to what Tracy did with Character Inc. Or character.org. And so this is going to be very, very exciting. My sense is that a couple of meetings that I've been able to be involved in with them, and reports from Jennifer, is that this will go beyond our expectations for WFPIP. The issue you will be faced next year for the following year budget is the magnet supplement that will enable them to implement the design. So I guess I'm on 23 now, and that would be the American Sign Language pilot that is one of your budget goals. This is representative, whether or not we can do this, whether or not it has to be cut from the budget. This is representative of a much larger issue. We now have a 4-year language requirement. We have students with diverse needs, different learning styles, different ways of adapting to material. We cannot do this through a traditional approach on the Romance languages exclusively. We have to have different languages that require different thinking modes or different styles of intelligence and learning styles. So American Sign provides us with one of those. We will also need in the future to look at, something like acrylic language or Greek or, an Asian language. Again, the learning style is different. The representation of symbols is different. And it does conform to different learning styles. So we have the 3-year language requirement now, which is geared toward UConn's admissions requirements. And interestingly enough, I sent you the article that UConn now has is starting a major beginning next year in American Sign. So they'll also be preparing teachers of American Sign as this has become more of a national trend.
I also wanted to comment on the employment opportunities around ASL. The demand from the Bureau of Labor Statistics put the growth opportunities specific to ASL at 42% from 2010 to 2020. So if you are skilled in that area, you are not only going to become an educator, an interpreter, but there's also demand in the medical fields and the legal fields. So it's also preparing our students for employment opportunities that the rest of the country may not have access to.
And I would add that 1 in 5 people have dyslexia, and that ASL is a language that they can master and fits their learning style and would fulfill the requirement that we are requiring that they have. So it is both eminently employable and also incredibly pragmatic.
Well, like all your budget goals, these are goals for a reason, because they're important things for us to be able to do.
Yep.
So 24 is pretty much complete at this point. We were really forced to accelerate on this issue relative to the influx we had of immigrant students at the beginning of the year. That was the initial design or enhancement that was the subject of the special appropriation that we received from the city. And then in the budget is the budget goal of the more comprehensive audit and design that this goal speaks to. We knew that going to scale with the number of students that we were getting, we had to introduce other methods, such as the bilingual method, such as co-teaching, several of the things that we were not doing, such that we could have a full spectrum of services in ELL as we do in special education. So this would be in place for the next school year based upon the design of the budget goal. And Barbara, I think you asked for a breakout of it at some point.
Of the cost of the phases, we did receive that.
Oh, and you did receive that, so.
In November, I think.
Yep. And then, what we're continuing to work on here is the expansion of the dual language program at Silvermine to West Rocks in the form of a dual language house. This would eliminate the need to to build an addition onto Roten, which was the original plan, or to build an addition onto Silvermine, which even preceded that, and that is difficult to do because there are not sewers there and there's not a lot of infrastructure. So it's very difficult from a construction standpoint and expensive. We would have a house of approximately 200 students, comprised of students who moved as a cohort from Silvermine 5th grade into 6th, 7th, and 8th. And it would be a very similar program. Obviously, it would be somewhat different due to the middle school offerings, but very similar in terms of the pedagogy. to the program at Silvermine. The reason for this is that students do not become proficient in both languages until the 7th grade. That is the national research. And for us to stop in 6th grade has been counterproductive. And then they've been going into regular Spanish in middle school, right? And they've essentially lost this incredible investment that has been made in their educations at Silvermine. So the objective here is a K-8 program. And dual language schools are by definition K-8 programs. You have another dual language at Jefferson. That strand of the school should also feed into West Rocks. And at 200 students, we would have this sized so that both Jefferson and Silvermine students would be accommodated within the 200 that can constitute a house. So it works from a space and enrollment perspective.
Can I just add something? I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful at some point with funding to have all of our schools, our elementary schools, starting early in kindergarten, where they're learning Spanish and they become bilingual. You know, it's fluid from elementary, middle, and high school. And by the time they leave, they have 2 languages that they're very comfortable with and competent in. Some, I know neighboring districts offer that.
Yep.
Not at this, I'm talking smaller districts, not our size, but I think that's something that we should look into at some point.
I agree, given the research, that the best time to do it is under 10. I heard this week something that really sat with me, which is if you're not bilingual, you're not truly prepared for a career in our century. And I think that's very true.
It's very true.
So when we had the opportunity of the 4 specials, I sort of dreamed that might be one. But maybe we could revisit that if the resources.
And I think if we're able to have that, but I believe especially starting in kindergarten, you absorb, you catch these children at 5 or 6, and then it's fluid and you continue going.
So I think 3 schools actually did that. I know Columbus is one. And so as their 4th special.
And the IB would have it.
And the IB would have it by definition. So, you're so absolutely right. And, only as Americans, we're like the only ones that think we only have to speak one language, right, in a global society.
My little cousin is 12 and she speaks 3 already. It's amazing.
Amazing. And again, the early acquisition is the amazing part of it. So, the board sets a policy agenda every summer at its retreat. This year, 3 policies were identified, one in minority recruiting, food charging, and nepotism. So minority recruiting, that was completed. That is on the books at this point. And food charging is being worked on currently.
Working on it as we speak.
Yep, and then nepotism will follow this spring. In terms of minority recruitment, our thoughts on implementing this were to take a portion of our Alliance grant. The Alliance grant is given to us for 3 purposes. It's reading and math intervention is one purpose. Additional time in instruction is the second. And the third is talent. And so the State Department has been urging us to diversify in terms of our use of this grant, because right now we're using it to support our CSIDs almost exclusively. So we were able to make some shifts in order to create a place in the Alliance grant to fund a minority recruiter and actually implement the policy. Now again, this is vulnerable, and as are many things in terms of our budget decisions, because if you had to make a substantial cut, we would have to put something else that's currently funded by the local budget into the Alliance grant and not do this. But that's the plan at this point, and we're optimistic we'll be able to carry that out.
Can we have a minute to go down the garden path?
You can. I just wanted to say for anybody who might not know what the acronyms we use are, that CSIDs are our curriculum site instruction directors. I might have gotten those letters reversed, but it's assistant principals.
Dr. Adamowski, you're so aware of what's happening at the state and national level. My understanding is that there are many young people who are DACA but not documented, who have the training to be teachers but cannot be certified. Is there any possibility of a path to citizenship through service and teaching in the same way that it might be through the military? Could we think around that?
Well, I'm sure there is. I mean, it would not be within our realm
Of course not, but
of
I'm just
policy
wondering, is
and
that something that
and
we want to
decision-making.
bump up to the people that we speak to that
Yeah,
is in their
so
realm?
Connecticut, after much urging, is finally going to participate in the Troops to Teachers program. Other than that, the only access that we've had outside of our traditional state and college teacher preparations situation has been the alternative route to teaching. But the alternative route only exists in the areas of shortage, of which this is one.
So ELL, SPED, science,
Yeah,
math.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the future lies in these alternative pathways. And we've been very successful with people coming through the alternative route, both the state's ARC program and Teach for America. Okay, this brings us to number 26, which was the topic for tonight, original topic for tonight, which was the review of special education services to confirm the accomplishment of the correct recommendations of 215 and identify areas for further growth. Eric, I wonder if you could take a minute and just brief the board in around some of the thinking about expanding this and some of the things that you might, in your committee, might want to look at that were not originally envisioned here.
So the ad hoc SPED committee has submitted what we're calling an enhanced audit request that would essentially supersede item number 26 in the priority implementation steps, as that was limited to just the scope of closing out the correct recommendations from 2015. I've requested that we enhance the original purpose of the audit to not only verify the completion of those items from 2015, but also to expand the depth and the breadth of our special education services review in an effort to prepare our next superintendent with the visibility necessary to develop measurable goals for our next strategic operating plan and to budget appropriately. The request for a more comprehensive audit will be managed within a reasonable budget and prioritized so that the most critical items can be tackled in a timely manner so they're ready for when that superintendent arrives. And I've asked Yvette to kindly formalize a revised RFP around the ad hoc committee's enhanced audit request. That new RFP will be prioritized so it highlights mandatories, and the mandatories will include those correct closeout items, as well as what we're calling enhancements and also alternatives. So the need to have, the things we'd like to have, and the things that we need to plan for and budget for in the future. And as a board, we're going to need to decide together if we fund those enhancements and those alternative options if they fall slightly outside of the budget. So I will thank you in advance for considering this proposal and supporting the ad hoc committee in our desire to arm our next superintendent with robust, data-driven recommendations for moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fantastic, and I want us always to be mindful of speaking to the broadest audience possible. Can you give me like a thimble version of that? You know what I mean?
Why?
Yeah.
The why.
Why?
The why. So obviously it's 5 years removed from the 2015 audit, and a lot of things have evolved since then. So we want to make sure that we are responding to 2020 and that we're preparing the next superintendent for 2021, and that we're going through each one of the programs that we're implementing today and making sure there's been due diligence done for those students in those programs.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. I also think the why for me is that this is an area that's incredibly difficult to monitor as a board member. We're flying blind without a true independent audit. And we know that this is an area of intense sensitivity for our community, and we want to be authentic in the conversation that we're having with our community about their trusting us with their children, and to move forward from some of the past animosity and just get a real report card and see where we are.
Okay, thank you. The last, and by the way, we're supposed to have 25 of these because the accountability plan for me is 25, 2 points each, right? We always end up with more than that. But, we've taken one out already. This next one, when it was conceptualized during the summer, was simply going to a healthier, for the city in terms of air quality, transportation system that, where we would use propane, which is 10 times cleaner, greener than the diesel particulates. And since then, we have a budget goal that's been enhanced by the high school start time and a couple of other items that would be great to accomplish in one fell swoop at the time that we look at the new buses, because remember, we'll have this for at least 5 years, if not 10 years. So we have to be careful that we have something that works for the future. There is one goal that I'm going to recommend we add, just based upon the amount of time we're spending on it, and that was unanticipated at the time that the board set these, and that would be a two-part goal regarding Norwalk High School. The first being the development of ed specs for the new Norwalk High School campus, and the second being the development of a program design for a visual and performing arts academy. At your next meeting, I'll be announcing a number of folks who have been invited to participate in that and who have agreed, and appreciate the recommendations that we've received from board members on that. I think we have a good mix of staff and community members, and a good mix across both visual and performing arts. We have a lot to learn. There's going to be a number of field trips to successful schools. I think right now we have knowledge of what it takes to have a good program in each particular siloed area, right? We don't have a good sense of what an integrated academy looks like or should offer. And that's the learning that this committee will go through. I'm going to have the opportunity to discuss with those who have been appointed so far a charge to the committee tomorrow afternoon. And again, this is going to be fairly comprehensive, and with the intention of going far beyond where we are now in terms of the offerings of an academy. So I'm going to be recommending we put that in two parts. So we'll still have 27, but one we know is no longer viable, and one based upon changes that have occurred since the summer is important, and we need to devote time to it. Just one final comment. On the next page are our priority outcomes. The first one has been accomplished as a result of the Next Gen Accountability Plan that has just been issued by the state. This is the subject of your March workshop, and we'll go into this in further detail then. But what we now know is that our accountability index score is above the state, and we are the only city in the state of Connecticut with an index score in excess of the state average. Last year there were 2. This year we're the only one. So that is good news. The rest of this is going to become known in June and July relative to our SPEC testing, the SAT testing, and our end-of-year NWEA testing. And so I'll have the opportunity to report on that to you as the final part of my evaluation before I leave. Any questions on what we were able to review tonight? All right, then I just have a couple of aspects of this to discuss with you in executive session.
And I have a motion that we enter executive session. Second.
Don't we have public comments?
No, we're having an executive session
Okay,
first, and
got
then
it.
public comments, and then another executive session, or no?
Well, we had anticipated on the agenda that you'd have public comments now and then go.
Oh, I see, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Is there a list of anybody who? We don't have, okay. Then, oh, Joe, okay. No worries. Come on down. Joe, hold on for 1 second.
I'm in there all the time.
Joe, hold on for 1 second. Right.
I move to reverse the motion that I just asked that we move to move. All right, if you could just state your full name for the record, address, you know the drill, 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
I'll be very short.
Got it.
Right. Joseph Janderco, 9 Mott Avenue. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. At this time of year, it's very important to reflect back on the accomplishments and examine our students and what our fellow staff members have completed. From school construction projects to increases in our NWEA scores, Norwalk staff has accomplished many great things. We appreciate the work that has been done to try to build relationships, and we ask that the NFT be invited back to be part of the work of the various committees as they have historically been done prior to Dr. Adamowski's tenure. A strong NFT voice will help to develop better implementation of the strategic operating plan in alignment with the Norwalk Public Schools contractual agreement with its teachers. Trust and transparency is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends our section of our public comments. Thank you. Now, can I have a motion to enter executive session?
So move.
And second?
Just a point of order, I may be wrong, but that may be a tape recorder up there. Is that right here?
Oh, is it?
Definitely.
So that's,
Okay, so then I move that we take a 5-minute recess while we go find Nancy.
That to you on his way out of the office?
needs to be removed from the room.
For sure, so let's take a 5-minute recess and we'll see if we can find Nancy. I have to go. I didn't even notice that.
Good eye.
Good eye, never would have.
Oh, yes.